24 Days of Wonder. 24 stories from my 19 years with Santaland on 34th Street. The first story I call Family Tradition. Long before the 1947 movie about him was released, Santa had already been a celebrated tradition on 34th Street. He'd actually been part of the store's holiday season dating back to its original location on 14th Street and 6th Avenue in the 1860s. So when I started in 1991, I became a part of a 130-year-old tradition. The power of that tradition became very clear to me during 2 visits on my 3rd day of work. The evenings during the first week are usually very quiet. At the start of my shift this night, a sales associate came up to have her picture taken with Santa Claus. She was carrying a photo album which showcased pictures of all of her years with Santa Claus at the store. There were almost 40 of them. They dated back to when she was just a baby to the year before. She said, "It isn't Christmas until I get a picture with you." Then midway through the shift, 4 women came in to visit with a 7-year-old girl. The women range in age from their 90s to late 20s. The second oldest of the women explained to me that they represented 5 generations, great-great-grandmother to great-great-granddaughter. The great-great-grandmother sat next to me and pulled out a very old and slightly battered picture of a little girl sitting on Santa's lap. The girl's clothes dated the picture to the early part of the 1900s. "This is me with Santa when I was 7 years old," she said. She told me that she grew up in Chicago, and every year she would visit Santa at Marshall Field's store on State Street. When she was 7, her family came to New York City to visit her grandmother. She was very upset that she was not going to visit Santa at Marshall Field's. "But my grandmother told me that Santa was here in New York," she explained. I didn't believe her, but we came here anyway. I knew this wasn't the real Santa. The real Santa was in Chicago. She told me that she had brought my mother to Santa here in New York when my mother was my age. I sat on Santa's lap, on your lap, and you looked at me and said, "What a good little girl. I bet you want a dolly with a blue dress for Christmas." The woman looked into my eyes at that point and continued, "The thing was, I did want a dolly with a blue dress. I don't know how you knew that. The only way you could have known it was if you were the real Santa. So from then on, I knew that the real Santa was here in New York. And when my daughter was 5, my mother and I brought her here to see Santa. And every generation we come back to have our picture taken with you." She then showed me 3 more pictures of the generations of her family as they visited with Santa, spanning a century. I told her it was so good to see her and her family again, and to see the children from so long ago come back to visit. And the whole time her great-great-granddaughter was staring up at me, her face filled with awe. We took a picture together, these 5 generations of women and Santa. I visited with the little girl, and then she and her mother and grandmother walked out of the house. Great-grandma and great-great-grandma stayed behind for a minute. Great-great-grandma held my hand and said, "Since this is probably the last time I will see you, I just want to thank you. 2 of the most important things in the world are family and keeping the traditions that we grow up with. And you've let my family have this wonderful tradition. God bless you." During the 2006 season, one of the guys who now worked in the red suit stopped me one day in the back hall. He told me they'd had a visit the day before from a family of 5 generations of women, from great-great-grandmother through great-great-granddaughter. And the great-great-granddaughter was a newborn. He said that they had shown him a series of pictures of all of them visiting Santa as a child. "The thing is," he said, "I think it may have been you in the last picture." And I was willing to bet it was. And that is story number 1.